Hello. We will now work on paper 2 of variant 3 in the 2023 October-November series. And there are about 22 questions in this paper. Let's get started then. So this is the first question that we have, which is related to time. So it states that Tara goes on a journey by train. The train leaves at 6:48. The journey takes 12 hours and 35 minutes. Find the time when Tara arrives. So I'm going to make use of a timeline for this question. So in this timeline, the time at which she started was 6:48. So this is the time at which she leaves the train. And the journey takes 12 hours and 35 minutes. So if it takes 12 hours means she will, if it takes 12 hours more than 6:48 will be 18:48, because here the time is given in the form of 24-hour clock time. Then the next thing that we have is we need to add 35 more minutes to this 18:48. So I'm gonna add 12 minutes onto this. So when I add 12 minutes onto this, this becomes 19, so which is easier for me to work out the rest. So then now from 35, when I deduct 12, I have 23 more minutes left. So I'm gonna add 23 more minutes into this. So when I add 23 more minutes onto this, this gives the time at which she arrives, which is going to be 19:23. So I can write the time as 19:23, or this is the same as 7:23 p.m. Let's move on to question number 2. There are 6 numbers given here. You need to find a cube number out of this and a prime number. A cube number is formed when 3 same numbers are multiplied together. In this case, 64 is going to be a cube number. The reason why 64 is a cube number is because 4 times 4 times 4 gives us 64. That is 3 same numbers multiplied together to give us 64. That's the reason why 64 is a cube number. 64 is also a square number, but they haven't asked anything about a square number. So they're just asking for a cube number. So 64 is a cube number. Next, we need to figure out a prime number. So a prime number is a number that has just 2 factors, and the 2 factors will be 1 and itself. So in this case, out of the numbers that are given here, we can skip all the even numbers because even numbers will not be prime except 2. And when we consider the other odd numbers that are left, 63 and 69 are divisible by 3, so we can skip that. So therefore, 61 will be the prime number that we have here because we cannot divide 61 by any other number other than 1 and itself. The next one is question 3. We have a similar leaf diagram given here, which shows the heights in centimeters. And they have given us a key. So this 10 and 4 represents 10.4 centimeters. So you need to calculate the median. So if we are to calculate the median is the score in the middle. So if we are to calculate the median here, I'm going to start crossing this out. So when I'm going to find the median is the number in the middle. So from this side, I'm going to go from the smallest number, I'm going to keep crossing. And from this side, from the largest number, I need to keep crossing. Smallest, largest, smallest, largest, smallest, largest, smallest, largest, smallest, largest, smallest, and then this is the largest. So we are left with this 2, which means that's going to be where the median is. This 2 represents 12.2, not 122, it's 12.2 because the key explains why it's 12.2 centimeters. The next question is for us to calculate the mean. Now, mean means to calculate the average. Now, when a stem and a leaf diagram like this is given to us, to calculate the mean, all the scores has to be added and we need to divide it by the number of scores. The number of scores given to us is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we have 13 scores. which means the total that we get here has to be divided by 13. So instead of writing all these numbers here, I'm going to put directly in the calculator so that it's easier for us to work on. So here we've got 10.4, then we've got 10.8, next it's 11.1, we've got 11.3, 11.4, 11.6, 12.2, 12.3, 12.6, 12.9, then we've got 13.2, 13.6, and then we've got 13.9. So when we add them all up, we get 157.3. So this 157.3 has to be divided by 13 to calculate the mean. So then I'm going to divide this answer that I have here by 13. So when I divide it by 13, I get 12.1, which means this 12.1 is the mean for the set of scores given in this stem and leaf diagram. So then let me put that here, which is 12.1. So 12.1 centimeters is our answer. Let's move on to the next question, which is question number 4. This is a question which is related to simple interest. So in this, Shubhu invests $750 and for 5 years, which pays a rate of 1.8% per year. So we need to calculate the total interest she earns during the 5 years. So the formula for simple interest is I is equal to PRN. So we are going to make use of this formula here, which is I is equal to PRN over 100. This P stands for the principal amount, that is the amount of the investment, the amount she invested, which is $750. So $750 times the rate, which is 1.8%. So the reason why we have 100 in the denominator is because when it comes to percentages, it's always calculated out of 100. That's the reason why we have 100 here. Even if it's compound interest, we have the formula A is equal to P times 1 minus R over 100 to the power N. Even there, the 100 is written below R. The reason is because the rate is a percentage. So when it's given as a percentage, it means it's always calculated out of 100. You multiply that with N. N is the period of time, which is 5 years. And I need to divide this by 100. So I'm going to put this in the calculator. So in the calculator, I'm going to put 750 times 1.8. I need to times it with 5. And then I got to divide that answer by 100. So when I do that, I get 67.5. So $67.5 is my answer. So this is going to be the total in total interest, because we're asked to calculate the total interest. If we are asked to calculate the total amount, in that case, to calculate the total amount, this interest should be added to the principal amount. So the amount that was invested and the interest that we found should be added together to calculate the value of the investment, that is the total amount. Let's move on to question number 5. In question 5 that is given here, we are given a triangle with 2 angles given to you. And the diagram shows a triangle where M is the midpoint, which means this side and this side will be equal. This triangle is rotated 180 degrees. About the center, the image and the original triangle together form a quadrilateral ABCD. So somewhere in this side, we will have D. Write down the mathematical name of the quadrilateral ABCD. So when we rotate it by 180 degrees, whether it's in the clockwise direction or in the anti-clockwise or the counterclockwise direction, it will be the same, the shape will be the same. Now, in this case, when you rotate it, this is how the shape is going to be. So the triangle will look like this. This is how it would look like, which means You're now asked to find the name. You are now asked to label write the name of this shape quadrilateral ABCD. This is where D will be. So this angle will be the same angle which is 112. So this angle which is 44 will be here when you rotate it. So to do this, we're going to make use of a tracing paper. You're going to place the tracing paper on top of this diagram. Place the pencil or the pen at M and start rotating it by 180 degrees. And this is where the tracing paper will fall after a rotation of 180 degrees. And then we can draw the diagram. In this case, you're asked to name the quadrilateral. Now here, definitely, this is a shape with 4 sides. And all 4 sides are not equal. So it can't be a rhombus or a square. And also it can't be a rectangle because the opposite sides are not 90 degrees. In this case, it definitely cannot be a trapezium or even a rhombus. Trapezium because only two sides are parallel in a trapezium. It's not a rhombus because all 4 sides are not equal. And so this cannot be a kite as well. Therefore, this is going to be a parallelogram. So the reason why this is a parallelogram is because the opposite angles are equal and the opposite angles look parallel as well when we rotate it. At the same time, the opposite sides are equal as well. Therefore, this will be a parallelogram. The next question is for us to find the angle BAD. So if we are to find the angle BAD, so BAD is this angle that we have here. So for us to calculate this angle that we have here, we first need to find how much this part of the angle will be. So for us to find this part of the angle, we need to make use of this triangle ABC, where 2 angles are known to us, and we are trying to find the third angle. To find the third angle, from 180 degrees, we need to deduct both 112 and 44. So when we deduct both 112 and 44 from 180, we get 24 degrees. This is the value of this angle that we have here. We are now supposed to calculate the value of this complete angle for us to find what BAD is, which is to add this 24 and 44 together. So when we add 24 and 44 together, it gives us 68 degrees. This is the value of the angle BAD. Now let's move on to the next question that we have, which is question 6. Question 6 is a probability question where the probability, we need to find, the table shows the probability of how a student chosen at random travels to school. So they travel by bus, they walk to school, travel by car, and there are other means of transport as well. Then you need to complete the table. To complete the table, when it comes to probability, all these values as a decimal, when we have decimals, they will make a total of 1. So for me to find how much this is, from 1, I need to deduct these 3 values given to us, which is 0.4, 0.32, and then 0.17. So from 1, when I deduct these values, I get 0.11. This is going to be the value of this missing box that we have here. The next part of the question is where there are 1,800 students at school. Find the expected number of students that walk to school. So to find the number of students who walk to school, the probability is given to us as 0.32. So you simply multiply the probability that is given to us, which is 0.32, with the total number of students, which is 1,800. So when we multiply these two together, we get 576. So this gives us the number of students who walk to school. Let's move on to question number 7. In this question, we have to do the division of fractions. So when it comes to the division of fractions, we need to always make sure to convert the mixed fraction into an improper fraction, whether we do addition, subtraction, division, or multiplication. In addition to that, when we have division, we need to change the division into a multiplication. So first, let's convert the mixed numbers that we have into improper fractions by multiplying the whole number with the denominator. And I need to add the numerator to it. So 1 times 6 is a 6. 6 plus 5 makes it 11. So that is 11 over 6. We divide it by 11 over 15. So when we have division, we cannot simplify it unless we change this into multiplication. So when we change this into multiplication, We need to keep the fraction as it is. The first fraction is kept as it is. We flip the division into multiplication. So we keep, change, and then we need to flip the fraction. So we keep the first fraction, change the sign, and flip the fraction. So keep, change, flip. So when I flip this fraction, the denominator goes to the top and the numerator goes to the bottom. So then now I can simplify this 11 with this 11 because they both are divisible by 11. I can also simplify the 2 and the 6 and the 15 by dividing both by a 3. This becomes a 2, this becomes a 5. This gives us the answer 5 over 2 because when we multiply 1 times 5, it is a 5. 2 times 1 is a 2. This is an improper fraction which can be written as a mixed number. So the number of 5s that go inside, the number of 2s that go into 5 is a 2. And there is a remainder of 1. The denominator stays the same. So it's going to be 2.5, which is the answer. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 8. We're supposed to calculate the highest common factor of the two numbers given to us. In this case, we are going to draw the factor tree for both the numbers, for 48 as well as for 80. When we draw the factor tree for 48, I can divide it by 2, I get 24. I can divide this by 2, I get 12. Further, I can divide by 2, I get 6. Again, I can divide by 2, I get 3. When I divide this 80 by 2, I get 40. I can divide this by 2, I get 20. Divide this by 2, I get 10. I can divide this by 2 again, and I get 5. So, all these numbers that we have here in the ends are prime numbers, which means each of these numbers given to us can be written as a product of prime factors. So I can write this 48 as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. And I can write this 80 as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. So when we try to find the highest common factor, here when we write the two numbers as a product of prime factors, it's always best to avoid writing it in the form of index, because we need to start grouping it. That's the reason. So here we can make one group of 2, another group of 2, another group of 2, and another group of 2. So those are the only groups that can be made. The 3 has no partner for me to make a group. And this 5 also has no partner in 48 for us to make another group. So we can skip those 2, which means the highest common factor will be the product of these groups. So from each group, you're going to pick one number, and to find the highest common factor, you multiply them. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 gives us 16, which means 16 is the highest common factor. So this is the largest number that can divide both 48 and 80. Let's move on to question number 9. In question number 9, the formula is given to us. We need to find the positive value for y when p is 108 and when w is 8. So I'm going to substitute these values into this formula. So p is 108. This is equal to 2 times 8 times y squared divided by 3. I need to isolate y for me to find what y is. I need to bring the 3 that is dividing to the other side. It gets multiplied with this 108. The 2 and the 8 both are being multiplied with this y squared. So when I take these 2 to the other side, they both will divide whatever that is there in the left side of the equation. So 2 and 8 both will divide 108 times 3. This will give us what y squared is. But I need to find what y is. To find what y is, I need to do the square root of the answer that I get here. And when I do the square root of the answer, the moment I put the square root, it will have a positive as well as a negative solution. But in this case, they're asking only for the positive value. So there's no need for me to put the plus and the minus sign. Instead, I can put this in the calculator and see what I get as the answer. So I'm going to put the square root, fraction bar. I have 108 times 3. And in the denominator, I've got 2 times 8. So when I solve this, I get 9 over 2, which is the same as 4.5, which means the value of y is 4.5. So that is the positive value for y. Let's move on to question number 9. In question number 9, we are given a column vector, which is a to b, 7, negative 3. And we need to find what 3 times a to b is. So 3 times a to b means the column vector, which is 7 over negative 3, has to be times by 3. That's the meaning. So we can write it as 3 times 7 and negative 3 both should be multiplied by this 3. So this 3 will multiply the 7 as well as this negative 3, making it 21 over negative 9. So 21 negative 9 is going to be the answer. So here the column vector will be 21 negative 9. The next one is to calculate to find what the modulus of a to b is. Now first, when we consider this diagram, which is given as a to b, the column vector which is a to b, the column vector is given as 7 and negative 3. The meaning of this is this column vector from A, if I start at point A, if this is point A, this 7 explains that it's going to go 7 units to the right, and then negative 3 explains that it's going to go 3 units down. This is the meaning, which means this is where point B is. So A to B is going to be from here to here. This is what A to B is. Now we need to find the modulus of A to B means they're asking us to find the positive value. The answer should be in the positive value form. And it should be the hypotenuse or the length of A to B. So this AB is the hypotenuse for this triangle. So we can say it as we are trying to find the distance of A to B, which is a positive value, which should be a positive value. We do not use this negative 3. Instead, you use the positive value because it's like you're applying the Pythagoras theorem to calculate the hypotenuse. So simply, we need to square this 7. We need to square this 3 as we are trying to calculate A to B or AB. AB is the hypotenuse. You need to add the 2 squares and square root it. So when we do this, we get the answer as square root of 58, which is the same as 7.62. That will be the modulus of A to B. Let's move on to question 11. A bronze sphere has radius 3.6 centimeters, and the density of bronze is 8.05 grams per cubic centimeter. We need to calculate the mass. So the formula for density is given to us as density is equal to mass over volume. So I will write it as density is equal to mass over volume. The question is asking us to calculate the mass, which means I need to isolate mass. So I need to take the volume that I have to the left side of the equation. Or when I do that, it will get multiplied with density. So this is what mass is equal to. So to calculate the mass, we need to multiply the density and the volume together. And in the question, it clearly states that to find the mass in kilograms and to the nearest gram. So there are 2 things to pay, we need to pay careful attention to. So first, I'm going to multiply the density with the volume. The density is 8.05 grams per cubic centimeters. I'm going to multiply that with volume, which is equal to, in this case, to calculate the volume, the radius of the sphere is given to us. So the formula for the volume of the sphere is given here. So I'm going to substitute it here as 4 over 3 times pi times the radius, which is 3.6 cube. This will give us the volume. We multiply this volume with 8.05. This will give us the mass. So I'm going to put this in the calculator and see what we get as the answer. So we have 8.05, which we need to times it with 4/3. So 4 over 3 times pi times, so pi times 3.6 cube is equal to the answer, which is 1573.229176. But this answer that we get will be in grams. The reason is because here the density is given to us as grams per cubic centimeter, which means our answer will be in grams. The question is asking us to convert it into kilograms, which means this answer that I get here has to be divided by 100. So I'm going to put the same answer, 1573 2, I will write it as 2, 3. Correct to I'll write it as 229 itself. So 1573, 1573.229 is what we have here. So I'm going to write it the same way, 229. After that, we have a 1. We don't have to write that. And this many grams. This is the mass. I need to convert this into kilograms. So for me to convert this into kilograms, a smaller unit is converted into larger unit, means we need to divide. And to convert grams to kilograms, I need to divide it by 1,000. So I'm going to divide this by 1,000. When I divide it by 1,000, the decimal point will move 3 units to the left, which will give me 1.573229 kilograms as the mass. So we have found the mass in kilograms, but we haven't written it to the nearest gram. So when it comes to writing it to the nearest gram means that this is very important to understand. So we know that in a kilogram, we have 1,000 grams, which means they're simply asking you to write our answer in kilograms to 3 decimal places. That's the meaning. Because now you need to write it to the nearest 1,000th. That's the meaning. Which means you need to circle this digit, underline the next digit, so you cannot round it up, which gives us 1.573 kilograms as the answer. So now this is going to be the mass. So we now have written the mass in kilograms, correct to 3 decimal places, which means that is to the nearest gram. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 12. In question 12, it states that Oliver sent 22% more messages in June than in May. He sent 305 messages in June. Find how many more messages he sent in June than in May. In this case, so we have May, so I'm going to label that with M. And then we have June, I'm going to label with the letter J for that. In June, the number of messages he sent was 305 messages. We need to calculate how many more messages he sent in June than in May, which means for us to do that, first we need to calculate how many messages he sent in May. And here it clearly states that in June, the messages he sent was 22% more. So this 22% more explains that there is a percentage increase of 22%. So this percentage increase explains that percentage increase of 22% means to write that percentage increase as a decimal, I can write it as percentage increase. I'm going to find the multiplier for it. So I need to add this 22 increase to 100, which becomes 122%. But this 122% as a decimal will be 1.22 because I need to divide this 122 by 100 to write the percentage as a decimal. So I know that it's going to be 1.22, which is the multiplier. Now, in the question that is given to us, we are asked to find what's the starting amount. We need to find what the starting amount is, while the final amount is given to us. Once when we know what this percentage increase is as a decimal, we need to divide the final amount that is given to us by this multiplier to find the amount of messages he sent in May, which means this 305 that we have here has to be divided by 1.22. So I'm going to divide 305 by 1.22. So when I do the division, I get 250, which means this explains that he sent 250 messages in May. The question is asking us to calculate how many more messages he sent. So from 305, we need to deduct this 250 that we have. So when we do the subtraction, it gives us 55, which means he sent 55 messages more. This is going to be our answer. Let's move on to the next question. In question 13, the graph is given to us. This graph that is given to us is y is equal to 2x plus 1. And this is a question that is related to inequalities, where you're supposed to shade in the unwanted region for these 3 inequalities given. And you need to find the region, you need to label the region that satisfies all 3 inequalities with the letter R. Now, this is the graph of the line y is equal to 2x plus 1. Now, here the inequality that is given to us is y is greater than or equal to 2x plus 1. So definitely this line is a solid line, and it is given as a solid line. So greater than or equal to 2x plus 1 means it's like this is greater than positive 1. So greater than positive 1 in the y-axis. So here 1 in the y-axis is here. So greater than positive 1 in the y-axis means it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to be the region that is in the left side of this line, which is the answer, which is the region that you should be shading for this line, for this inequality. But then we are asked to shade in the unwanted region. Due to that reason, we need to shade in the region that is in the right side of the line, to the right side of this line. So this is the region we need to shade in. So I'm going to shade this region like this. Then the next inequality that is given to us is given as y is greater than or equal to 1. So we're going to forget about the inequality sign. Think about it as an equal sign, which means y is equal to 1 means it has to go through 1 in the y-axis. So this is where 1 in the y-axis is. So the line should be a line like this. Now, when we consider the inequality sign, we have a line under this inequality sign due to that under. So it says greater than or equal to. Due to that reason, this has to be a solid line. And here it states that it should be y is greater than or equal to 1. That means everything above 1 will be the answer. But we are supposed to shade in the unwanted region. As we are supposed to shade in the unwanted region, everything that is below this line has to be shaded. So we're going to shade in everything that is below this line. So this will be our answer. This will be our solution for this inequality alone. Then the next one is we have another inequality that is given to us, which is 4x plus 3y is less than 12. Now, for us to draw this is going to be a straight line equation. So if we change the inequality and replace it with an equal sign, this will be a straight line equation. But this straight line equation, if I'm to write it here in the side, it's 4x plus 3y is, let's replace the inequality sign with the equal sign, will be equal to this 12. Now, when we write straight line equations, we need to make sure we write it in the form y is equal to mx plus c, where y is made the subject and it has to be positive, which means I need to take this 4x to the other side. When I take this 4x to the other side, to take it to the other side, I need to deduct 4x. So this becomes minus 4x, and already I have this 12, so I'm going to put that 12. Now, for me to find what y is equal to, I need to divide everything by 3. So this should be divided by 3. This also has to be divided by 3. When I do that, I get the inequality, I get the equation for y, which is y is equal to, we have negative 4 over 3x, and then 12 when I divide by 3, it is a 4. So plus 4 is the equation of the straight line that we have. Now, in the next step that we need to do is, we're going to graph it. This is the equation of the straight line. So we have rearranged it. This is what we have. Now what we got to do is we need to replace. I'm going to replace this inequality, this equal, the equal sign that we have here with the inequality sign. And at any point, we did not divide by a negative or multiply by a negative. Therefore, the inequality sign that we had, which is 4x plus 3y is less than 12, this inequality sign will continue like this. So then this is how the inequality sign will be. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the straight line. So, but this straight line that I'm going to draw should not be a solid line. It should be a dashed line because we do not have a line under. So then I need to first mark the y-intercept, which is positive 4. So this is where the y-intercept is. And then the next one is we have negative 4 over 3. This negative 4 over 3 is the gradient or the slope. So which is when we do rise over run. So to find the gradient, we do rise over run. So it states that 4 is rise, 3, 1. But as it's negative, it will not go up by 4 units. Instead, it will go down by 4 units. So 3, 4 units and across by 3 units. So to the right by 3 units. So this is where the next point will be. We're going to repeat the process. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And across by 3 units, we can mark only 2. The third unit will be somewhere over here. And now we are going to draw the straight line. So when we draw the straight line, this is how the straight line will be. And this straight line that we get here should be the straight line that we have here should be a dashed line. The reason why it has to be a dashed line is because we do not have a line under for this inequality sign that is given to us. Now the region that you should be shading is, now this is like y is less than 4, less than negative 4 over 3x plus 4 is like y is less than 4. Less than 4 means everything that is below 4 should be 4 should be considered. But the unwanted region is what you're supposed to shade. So everything above that should be shaded, which means everything on the above this line has to be shaded. So this is going to be the solution for that inequality. Now the question is asking us to find the region that satisfies all 3 inequalities. As we have shaded the unwanted region, the region that is not shaded at all will be the solution, which means this is going to be the solution. So this way, this is how the solution will be. This is the region. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 14. We have a box and a whisker plot that is given here, and the information in the box and the whisker plot is marked. So when it comes to a box and a whisker plot, the lowest value is written here, the largest value is here, and the 3 lines that we have here that makes the box is going to be called as the lower quartile, median, and the upper quartile, or sometimes it's called as first quartile, second quartile, and third quartile. It still means the same thing. Now we need to calculate the mass of the heaviest parcel. The heaviest parcel will be here. So the value here is going to be our answer. So we need to find what that value is. So according to the box and the whisker plot that is given to us, this will be 3.3 because 2 tiny boxes here represent 0.1 unit. So it's going to be 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, and 5. So this value is going to be 3.3, which means the weight of the heaviest parcel is going to be 3.3 kilogram. Then the next question is for us to calculate the interquartile range. If we are to calculate the interquartile range is the difference between the upper quartile and the lower quartile. So if we are to calculate the interquartile range, we need to identify what number is represented as the upper quartile and the lower quartile, and we need to find the difference. So this is the upper quartile. This part of the box only represents the upper quartile that is here. This is where the lower quartile is. So we are going to identify it. So we know that 2 boxes represent 0.1 unit, a tenth. So this will be 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and this one will be 2.4. So that is the lower quartile. That is the upper quartile, which is 2.4. And I need to deduct the lower quartile. So the lower quartile will be, so I'm going to deduct 0.1 each time. So this will be 1.9. This will be 1.8. So this is going to be in between 1.8 and 1.9, which is 1.85. So then from 2.4, I need to deduct 1.85 for us to calculate the interquartile range, which is equal to 0.55. So this 0.55 kilograms is the interquartile range. That's the difference between the upper quartile and the lower quartile. Let's move on to question 15. We need to find what D is. So we need to rearrange the formula. So when we consider D, we have 3 that is connected to it. Then we have E, and then we have the square root. So the furthest is to get to the square root. So we need to remove the square root first. To get rid of the square root, you need to square both the sides. That is how the square root and the square can be removed. So we have t squared is equal to 3d minus e. I need to isolate d, so I need to bring this minus e to the other side. So when I take it to the other side, that becomes plus e. So this is equal to 3d. Then I need to get rid of the 3 that is connected to this d by dividing both the sides by a 3. So when I divide both the sides by a 3, I get the value of d. So d is equal to t squared plus e entire thing over 3. This will be our answer. Let's move on to question number 16. This question is based on a cylinder, and in this cylinder that is given to us, the height of the cylinder is given. So I'm going to first draw a small sketch for a cylinder, and I'm going to mark the information that is given. The height is given to us as 12.5 centimeters. Then the curved surface area, so I'll mark it here. The curved surface area is given to us as 105 pi square centimeters. We're supposed to calculate the volume of the cylinder. If we are to calculate the volume of a cylinder, it's the area of the cross section times the height, which is pi r squared times height. So in this case, you will multiply pi with the radius, but the radius is not known to us. We need to find the radius. And then the next step is to multiply the answer that we get there with the height, which is 12.5. Now to calculate the radius only, we need to make use of the curved surface area of a cylinder. When calculating the curved surface area of a cylinder, the formula used is 2 pi r h, which means I can state that this 2 pi r h is only equal to this 105 pi. We know the value of h, so we can find what r is. So I'm going to isolate r first. So r is equal to this 105 pi, and I need to bring 2 pi and h to the other side. So they are all multiplying with r. So when I take it to the other side, they will all divide the answer that we have in the other side. So 105 pi is divided by 2 pi and h. Now, the next thing that we need to do is I'm going to substitute the value of h here. So we have 105 pi over 2 pi times the value of h, which is 12.5. I'm going to get rid of this pi and pi because they are in the numerator as well as the denominator, so I can simplify this. So I need to divide this 105 by 2 times 12.5. So when I do that, I end up getting 4.2 as the radius. This radius only has to be substituted here, and we need to square. So when we put this in the calculator, this will give us the volume of this cylinder. So that is going to be equal to pi times r is 4.2 squared. We need to times it by 12.5, which is equal to 692.72. So that is correct to 2 decimal places. So I can write it as 692.72 cubic centimeters because this is the volume of this cylinder. Let's move on to question 17. We have a question with a fractional index of 2/3 where we need to simplify this. The denominator of the fractional index is a 3, and we have 64 here. So, and I'm going to write this 64 so that it's written in the index form. So it has an index of 3 or a multiple of 3. So I'm going to write the index as 4 to the power 3 because 4 to the power 3 is equal to 64. I have y to the power 27, and this entire thing has a power of 2/3. This power 2/3 will get multiplied with this first power as well as the second power because this fractional index is distributed among both. So in that case, we will write it as 4 to the power 3 multiplied by 2/3, and we have y to the power 27 times by 2/3. So I can simplify the third and the third, and here I can simplify the third, and we have 27 here. The number of 3's that go into 27 is a 9. So now I can now that I have simplified it, I can write this as 4 to the power 1 times 2 is a 2, and then I have y to the power 9 times 2 is 18. So I can write what 4 to the power 2 is. It's important that we write how much 4 to the power 2 is, which is 16. So I can say 16 y to the power 18 is our answer. Let's move on to part B. We need to simplify this question. We have x minus 5 in the numerator. In the denominator, we have x squared minus 25, which is the difference of squares because they both are square numbers with a minus. So we can do the difference of squares and we can put them into 2 brackets. by imagining it as if we are square rooting them. And we need to put our answers within the brackets with a minus and with a plus. So in this case, it will be the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 25 is 5. So I need to write this x and 5 with a minus and with a plus. Now I need to start simplifying the numerator with the denominator. So this and this will cancel out. And our answer will be 1 over x plus 5. So this will be the answer for this question 17. Let's move on to question 18. In question 18 that is given here, it states that f is proportional to the product of m and a. Calculate the percentage change in f when m is increased by 40% and a is decreased by 15%. So even in one of the previous questions, we discussed about how to find the multiplier when there is an increase. The same way, it clearly states that this has been increased by 40%, which means you need to add that 40 to 100, which becomes 140%. This as a decimal will be 1.4. The same way, we got to do for this decreased by 15% as well. If it's been decreased by 15% means from 100, we need to deduct this 15. So when we deduct 15 from 100, it gives us 85%. This 85% as a decimal is 0.85. We have identified the two multipliers. Now, in the question, it states that f is proportional to the product of m and a. Product means multiplication. So it's proportional to the product of m and a. So I'm going to replace this proportionality sign with a constant. So I can write it as f is equal to k times ma. I can write it this way. Now, the next step is, now it has been increased by 40% and decreased by 15% means f will stay the same f here. So, but then this f is going to be the new force. K, the constant will not change. The m now becomes 1.4 times larger. So I can write it as 1.4 m. Then a becomes 15% less smaller. So that's going to be 0.85 a. I can simplify this and write it as f is equal to 1.19 kma. This is what I have, which means now I need to find by how much the overall percentage change is. So here, this is the first inequality, first equation that we had, which is f is equal to kma. This is the new one. Now here the coefficient of k is 1. The number in front of kma is 1. Here the number in front of kma is 1.19. That means from 1, it has become 1.19 means it has increased by 0.19, which means from 1.19, I need to deduct this one, which is 0.19%, which is 0.19. This is written as a decimal. Now we need to convert this into a percentage. So to convert this into a percentage, I need to times this 0.19 by 100. This gives us 19%. So the percentage increase, it has an overall percentage increase of 19%. The way we know that this is a percentage increase is because the moment it goes beyond 1, it will definitely be percentage increase. So it's 1.19. Definitely, the overall is a percentage increase. Let's move on to question 19. Calculate the obtuse angle PRQ. So we are supposed to calculate the obtuse angle for PRQ. So this is this angle PRQ. So we are supposed to calculate what PRQ is. The side that is opposite to this angle is known. The side opposite to this angle is known, and the angle is known to us as well, which means we are going to make use of the sine rule. So I can write the sine rule as A over sine A is equal to B over sine B. So instead of writing it directly, I'm going to substitute the values. So I'm going to write A as 18 over sine A is going to be sine of this angle R that we have, which is angle PRQ. this is equal to, in the other side, the length should be written at the top, which is 13.5 over sine 42. That is the sine angle. We can also write the angle at the top and the side lengths at the bottom. There's no problem with that. We will still end up getting the same answer. I need to isolate r to find the value of the angle r. So I'm going to cross multiply to do that, to find what r is. So 18 gets multiplied with sine 42, which is equal to 13.5 times sine r. Now I'm going to bring this 13.5 to the other side. So it will divide what we have here, which is 18 times sine 42 has to be divided by 13.5. This will give us what sine r is equal to. So to find r is the value of the angle. We have to bring this sine to the other side. Sine to the other side means we need to find the inverse of sine when calculating the angle. And this entire fraction that I have here, which is 18 times sine 42 divided by 13.5 should be written here. And I'm going to close the brackets. I need to put this in the calculator to find what r is. So using this, I can find how much r is. So I'm going to put it in the calculator. So inverse sine, fraction bar, I'm going to put 18 times sine 42, close the brackets there, and then in the denominator, I have 13.5. Then I'm going to close the bracket that I opened at the beginning, and this gives me 63.147. So corrected 2 decimal places, it's going to be 63.15. So this 63.15 is not an acute and is not an obtuse angle, but this is an acute angle. But the question clearly states that we are supposed to calculate the obtuse angle. So here, the rule that we used was the sine rule. Now, when it comes to the sine rule, when we consider a unit circle, so I'm going to draw a unit circle here in the side. So I have already drawn the unit circle. I have already given a small note about the unit circles here. In the unit circle, sine angle will be positive. Now here in this case, when we try to calculate what sine angle is, we end up getting a positive value here. Sine r gives an overall positive value. We have no negatives here. So in this case, now the sine angle will be positive in this quadrant, in the first quadrant, and in the second quadrant, because it goes as all silver teacups. So silver is here, that means sine is positive there. Now that we know that sine is positive in the first and the second quadrant, this 63.15 degree is the angle that is in the first quadrant. Because when measuring angles, we need to start from 0 here, and it goes in the anti-clockwise direction or the counterclockwise direction from 0. So this is the first quadrant. So the angle 63.15 is the angle that we have here. This is going to be that 63.15 degrees. I need to find the other positive, other angle that will give us the same, value as this one. In that case, I'm going to reflect this line across the y-axis. So when I reflect it, this is how it will be reflected, which means this angle will be the same 63.15, but from 0 all the way up to this angle is what we need to find. So up to this part, from here all the way up to this point will be 180 degrees, because that's the angles on a straight line. So from 180 degrees, if I deduct this angle, which is the size of this angle, which is 63.15, I can find the value of the obtuse angle. So when I do that, from 180, I'm going to deduct 63.15, which will give us the value of the obtuse angle, which is equal to 116.85 degrees. This will be the value of the obtuse angle PRQ. Let's move on to the next question that we have. In question 20, we have 3 brackets given to us, and it states that when we multiply them, it is equivalent to 2x cubed plus bx squared plus cx minus 18. We need to find what a, b, and c is. So when we are given three brackets, we need to expand them first. So we have x plus a, x plus 2, and 2x plus 3. So I'm going to expand the second and the third bracket first. I need to multiply this x and this 2x. That becomes 2x squared. Then I'm going to multiply this x and the 3. So x times plus 3 is plus 3x. I'm going to multiply this 2 and this 2x. So that becomes plus 4x. Then this 2 gets multiplied with this 3. That becomes plus 6. Now I can simplify this. So I get 2x squared plus the 3x and 4x makes it 7x plus 6. This is the answer that I get when I multiply the second and the third brackets. I do have the first bracket as well, which is x plus a. Now I'm going to multiply x plus a with the answer that we got here. So then I'm going to multiply x and this 2x squared, which becomes 2x cubed. Then I'm going to multiply x with this 7x, which becomes 7x squared. Then x and this positive 6, which is equal to 6x. Then a and this 2x squared, which is 2ax squared. Next, I'm going to multiply this a with this 7x, which is 7ax. And this a, I'm going to multiply with this plus 6. That's equal to 6a. So this is what I have, what we get. Now, in the question already, they've mentioned what it actually is equal to. So that is equal to 2x cubed plus bx squared plus cx minus 18. This is what this is equivalent to when we expand them. Which means, now here, what we got to do is, we know that the 2x cubed that we have here and this 2x cubed, it's the same thing. There's nothing to change there. When we consider the bx squared, so this b is a number in front of x squared, because a, b, and c, they are all numbers. So b is a number in front of this x squared. So the terms that have x squared, I'm going to identify, which is this 7x squared. And the next one that I have is, so in addition to this 7x squared, I have 2ax squared. I'm going to pick these two because they both have x squared in them. Even though it has 2a, this a is actually a number. So then, in this case, so a could be a 2, a 3, or any number. So if a is a 3 means it will be 2 times 3, which is 6x squared. So definitely 6x squared and 7x squared will be equal to this bx squared. So I can clearly state that this 7x squared and this 2ax squared is equal to this bx squared. They all have x squared in common. So I can write that as 7 plus 2a is equal to b, because I can get rid of the x squareds in all three terms. So I have 7 plus 2a is equal to a b. Then the next thing that we are going to do is, we are going to make use of another, the other term, which is cx. So previously, we related it with this bx squared. Now we are going to move on to the cx. So when we consider the cx that we have here, the c is a number in front of x. So you need to find all the terms with x and a number in front. So it's going to be this 6x. And it could also be 7ax, because 7 as well as a, this a is also a number. So I can clearly state that 6x plus 7ax is equal to this cx. So they all have x in common. So I can get rid of that x and write it as 6 plus 7a is equal to c. So this is the next equation that we can write. Then finally, we also know that according to the question that is given to us, we have minus 18 here, that is a number. And we have this plus 6a, it will be equal because a is a number. So these two when multiplied should be equal to minus 18. So I can say that 6a is equal to minus 18. Now I need to solve this to find what a, b, and c is. So first I'm going to solve this last one, which is 6a is equal to minus 18, because I can find what a is by dividing this minus 18 by 6. So when I divide minus 18 by 6, I get the value of a as minus 3. Now I know that a is minus 3. Now that I know a is minus 3, I could substitute into this 6 plus 7a, which is equal to c. So it will be 6 plus 7 times negative 3, which is equal to c. So the value of c will be equal to, when we solve this, 7 times negative 3 is negative 21. And when we add 6 into that, it gives us negative 15 as the value for c. So we know that the value of c is negative 15. The same way, we got to find what b is. So to find what b is, we know what a is. So it's going to be 7 plus 2 times the value of a. The value of a is negative 3. So this gives us what b is. So 7 plus 2 times negative 3 is 2 times negative 3 gives us negative 6. 7 plus negative 6 gives us 1, which is equal to b. So we now have found what a, b, and c is equal to. So we know a is equal to negative 3, b is equal to 1, and c is equal to negative 15. We are done with this question. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 21. In this question that is given to us, we need to calculate b to m, or bm. The length of bm is what we are supposed to find. If we are to calculate what this length bm is, according to this diagram that is given to us, we are going to make use of this side and this side. Now, it's also mentioned that m is the midpoint of hg. H to g, m is the midpoint, means this portion and this portion will be equal. The total length b to m is given to us as, b to m is what we are supposed to find. We know what a to b is. A to b and h to g will be the same. So if this is 14, means this complete length will be 14, which means this is 7 and this is 7. Now we need to calculate what b to m is. To find what b to m is, we are going to do it this way. We are going to find the distance from b to g. This b to g is going to be the hypotenuse for this triangle BCG. If we know what b to g is, then we can definitely make use of this b to g and this m to g that we have here to find what b to m is, because this part also will be a a right angled triangle when we try to apply Pythagoras' theorem. So if we imagine as if we slice it through this, in that case we can understand that this will be a right angle as well. So first we need to find what b to g is. So if I'm to find what b to g is, we need to apply the Pythagoras' theorem where we are supposed to calculate the hypotenuse. So you square the two shorter sides together. Both the shorter sides should be squared. We need to add them up and square root it. So 5 squared is 25, 8 squared is 64. 64 and 5 squared, when we add, we end up getting 89. So I'm going to leave it as a surd itself, or a radical. We call it as a surd or a radical, which is the square root of 89. This is going to be this length that we have here, which is b to g. I also know what m to g is. Now I'm going to apply the Pythagoras' theorem again into this triangle. So it's like we apply Pythagoras' theorem twice. In this case, again, this b to m will be the hypotenuse for this right angle triangle that we have here. That means I need to square bg and mg, add them up together and square root it to find what bm is. Which means for us to find what bm is equal to, when I square mg and bg, mg squared is 7 squared plus the square of bg is equal to the square root of 89, which means the square root of 89 has to be squared, and then this answer has to be square rooted for me to calculate the hypotenuse, which is bm. In this case, I can definitely cross out the square and the square root that we have here. So 7 squared plus 89, and then we need to square root it. So I'm going to put this in the calculator. So the square root of 7 squared plus 89 I'm going to find, or we can also write it as the square root of 89 squared, still give us the same answer, which is the square root of 139. that is equal to 11.747. So correct to 2 decimal places, this will be 11.75. So we now know that BM is equal to 11.75 centimeters. So that is what we are supposed to calculate here. The second part of this calculation is to calculate the angle BM, the angle that BM makes with the base ABCD. The angle BM that makes with the base ABCD means this is the base ABCD. The angle it makes means I'm going to complete this into a triangle, which is a right angle triangle. And simply they are asking us to calculate what this angle is. So for us to calculate what this angle is, we know this M to this point here is the same as G to C, because that is the perpendicular height, which is 8. And we already know what B to M is. We found B to M as 11.75. So we are going to make use of that triangle. So if I'm to draw that triangle here, this is how it will be. This is the angle that we are supposed to calculate. The perpendicular height is 11.7. The hypotenuse is 11.75. That is the slanted side. The perpendicular height is given to us as 8. So I'm going to mark 8 here. And we are supposed to calculate the angle. For this angle that is given to us, the height is the opposite side and the hypotenuse is the hypotenuse anyways. So this is the opposite side and the hypotenuse. So when we consider SOHCAHTOA, we are going to see which trigonometric ratio to use to calculate the value of the angle. So it should be something to do with the opposite and the hypotenuse. So in this case, we will go with sine. So we are supposed to calculate the value of the angle here. So sine theta will be equal to the opposite side, which is 8, over the hypotenuse, which is 11.75. But we are supposed to find what the angle is. So we need to do inverse of this fraction that we have, which is 8 over 11.75. So we are going to put this in the calculator and we can see what we get as the answer. So inverse sine for this fraction, which is 8 over 11.75 is what we are supposed to do. So when we solve this, we get 42.91. So correct to 2 decimal places, it's going to be 42.91. So 42.91 degrees is the answer. So I'm writing it correct to 2 decimal places, but that doesn't mean that your answer will be wrong if you write it to 1 decimal place. The standard way of writing is to write the answer correct to 3 significant figures. So as long as it's to 3 significant figures or more than that, you will still get the mark. So then we are done with this question. Let's move on to the next question that we have, which is question 22. This is the last question that we have. So here we are given a straight line equation, which is 4x plus y is equal to 9. And we are given a curve, which is y plus x squared is equal to 5. So this curve is a quadratic curve. So we must find the coordinates of the point where those two intersect. In this case, if you check the space that is provided for the answer, they have just given you one blank with a comma in between, which means we are supposed to find only one coordinate point there. Let's see why they have given us one coordinate point. Usually we do get 2, but there are times when we get just 1. Now this is when the curve and the straight line, they intersect at just one point like this. Now we need to find the intersecting point, the coordinates of the intersecting point. So to do this, I'm going to write the equation here. So it's given as 4x plus y is equal to 9. This is the first equation given. I'm going to make y the subject in this. So I need to take this 4x to the other side. So it becomes 9 minus 4x. The next equation that is given to us is given as 4 plus x squared is equal to this 5. What I'm going to do is, I know that this y is equal to 9 minus 4x. I'm going to substitute it here. We're going to make use of the substitution method. So this makes 9 minus 4x plus x squared is equal to a 5. The moment you see a square for x or any variable, and if that is the highest power, and if you are given an equation means we need to understand that this is a quadratic equation. So when we try to solve a quadratic equation, we need to make sure that we make the equation equal to a 0. So I'm going to take this positive 5 to this side. So all the terms are in the left side. and in the right side we will have a 0. So this will give us, so we already have 9 minus 4x plus x squared. When I take the positive 5 to the other side, that becomes negative 5. This is equal to this 0. I need to combine all the like terms, so I can write it as x squared minus 4x plus 9 minus 5 becomes minus 4, which is equal to a 0. Now, I need to factorize this, so I can make use of the formula to solve this, or the factorizing method, or even the completing the square method, which will give us the same answer. But I'm going to see if the factorizing method works here. So here the coefficient of x squared is a 1, so definitely we can make use of the factorizing method, and even if the coefficient is any other different number, we can still make use of the factorizing method. So here, when we have a coefficient of 1, it explains that we can make use of the quicker way to solve it. That is, when we multiply the two numbers together, it should give you this last number, which is negative 4. And when we add those two numbers together, it should give us the coefficient of x, which is this negative 4, which means the two numbers that will fit here will be 2 and 2, but they both has to be negative, because only then the negative and the negative 2 will make a positive 4, and it will be equal to a negative 4 here. So in this case, now when we try to solve this, when we multiply them, we need a positive 4. Okay, we made a small mistake here. When we bring the negative 5 to the other side, it becomes a positive 4. So that means when multiplied, it should give us a positive 4. So definitely negative 2 and negative 2 gives us a positive 4. So then the next thing that we got to do is, now that we know that these two are going to be negative 2 and negative 2, I can put within the brackets as this x and one of this number, which is negative 2, the same x and the other number, which is negative 2, which is equal to a 0. So we clearly know that both these brackets are equal and they are equal to a 0. So as both the brackets are the same, I can just say that this x minus 2 is equal to a 0, which means the value of x is a positive 2. Now that I know that the value of x is a positive 2, I need to find what y is. The value of y, to find the value of y, I'm going to substitute this into our first equation, but I'm going to use the equation that we rearranged, which is y is equal to 9 minus 4x, because already y is made the subject there, which is much more easier for us to solve. We are going to substitute the value of x here, which is 2. So this will give us 9 minus 4 times 2. So that is equal to 9 minus 8, which is the same as a 1. This gives us the value of y, which is a 1. So the value of x is positive 2, the value of y is 1. So we can write it as 2 and 1 in the form of coordinate points, because the value of x should be written first and then the value of y is written next. So this is the reason why we are given just one space to write just one coordinate point, because here we have a perfect square. So we call this as a perfect square. The reason why this is called as a perfect square is it's like two same terms or two same numbers multiplied together to give you this expression that we have here. With that, we are done with this question. And yeah, this is the last question, which is question 22.